the Gemara. So before we start, I just want to mention that today is the Yartzeit of my Rebbe, Reb Mendel Kaplan Zatzal. He was my Rebbe in First Medrash, and the year that we were his Talmidim is the year that he was Nifter. So he was Nifter the day before Erev Pesach. So today would be his Yartzeit. I want to share a couple of interesting stories about him. He was a very unique person. He was a Talmud of Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman. He even pointed out certain places in the Kovetz Shurim where Rabbi Elchanan quotes him. Rabbi Elchanan writes, the Talmud said, and he said, I was that Talmud. So he lived in New York, and he would commute. He would spend the weeks in yeshiva, slept in the dorm, and he spent Shabbos just at home. He used to go home Thursday afternoon and come back Sunday. So there were many interesting stories about his interesting perspective on life. So he used to always say he didn't like saying out English words. He would actually spell them out, but he didn't want to pronounce them. But he used to like calling a spade a spade. He was very real. L'moshel. He would say in America, it azach avok mezot amsari. Vos meint amsari. Amsari meant go to el. Those meant amsari. In other words, people say I'm sorry, but they don't mean it. He was a very sincere person, so he felt that he didn't like the bluff of America. Where before he became a Rebbe in Philadelphia Yeshiva, he lived in Chicago. He was a Rebbe in like a modern Orthodox type of yeshiva. The first day he came in, he didn't speak a word of English, coming in from Poland or from Shanghai, and he was sitting down to teach the Bochum. So he came in with the Chicago newspaper, and he said, Bochum, you will teach me how to read English, and I will show you how to read a newspaper. And then he would explain to them how what you read in the news isn't always acceptable at face value. Okay. So we were in the middle of a big kasha that the Gemara asked on Chizkiya. So yesterday, at the end of the day, we learned a brisa set over from Chizkiya, and there was a patent how to get around a technicality. The halacha is that you cannot be mechal ma'asheni on pachim shavapruta. So the minimum transaction of chilul of ma'aser sheni is a shavapruta because the problem is less than a shavapruta cannot accept chilul. Zok Chizkiya, I have a patent. I have a way to be able to be mechal even pachas mishavapruta. What do? You take money that ma'aser sheni had already been mechulal on, and being that people never want to take a chance that there won't be enough room left on the money to be mechalel the ma'aser sheni that they're being mechalel, so they'll always leave a little extra. So if it's a $10 coin, l'mashal, they'll only put on it $9.50. This way, there's a little bit of a buffer that they're not going to risk going over. So there's always a little bit of room left. So that little bit of room you could fill in with this ma'aser sheni that has less than a shavapruta. And his lashon is what you do is Oimer ma'aser sheni she'ein bo shavapruta oimer hu v'chaim shay muchulol al mois harishonos. Why could you do that? The mois harishonos is already loaded up with ma'aser sheni kedusha. Lefi she'i after loy adam letamsam ma'aser. We always leave a little bit of space, and that space can absorb the pachas misharaput. Based on that, the Gemara asked the kash on Chizkiya, because the Mishnah quoted a Mishnah that's talking about the chumrah that Truma and Bikurim have over ma'aser sheni, and the Mishnah says amongst the many chumras that Truma has over ma'aser sheni, it says that if you want to be mevatel Truma, you have to have 101 parts chulin keneged the Truma to be mevatel. Mashen can be meiser, which would be bottle baroid. So the Gemara ponders, where would it ever be relevant? Why would I ever need meiser to be bottle baroid? Zokt Rashi, the case where it would be necessary is you have meiser sheni that for some reason you cannot be paid it, nor can you take it to Yerushalayim and eat. Why do you have to say that that's the case? Because if you had a solution to be able to be poided or to be able to take it to Yerushalayim to eat, then it wouldn't be batal b'roiv anyway, because there's a halacha midrabanon that dover sheyesh loy matir and loy batal. If it's a dover sheyesh loy matir, if it's something where you don't need to come out to bittel, you can get around it through different means, like being poided, and then it's not a problem anymore. Or by bringing it to Yerushalayim and eating it there, no need to be mevatlet. So it has to be a case where you couldn't be poided and you couldn't be mevatlet. So what would be the case? It must be it's true, it's tamei. So if it's tamei, you can't schlep it up to Yerushalayim and eat it there because you cannot eat ma'aser sheni that's tamei. So why can't you be poided? You can't be poided because it's less than the shava pruta. So now, since it's less than the shava pruta, and it's tamei, and it's mixed in with chulin, let's say, since there's no other solution to be able to deal with this ma'aser sheni, let's say it should be batal b'roiv. Frek the Gemara, based on Chizkiya, you do have another solution. You could be poided something that's less than a shava pruta. So therefore, the Metzia de Chizkiya, which is the fifth line on Daf Nun Gimel Amar Aleph, the Metzia de Chizkiya, Havale Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirin, Kum Techais. This Metzia that you want to be mevatel has another way to solve the problem. You could be poided according to Chizkiya. So how could you say it's batal b'roiv? Because b'chol davar sheyesh le'matirin afilu ba'alef le'batal. So according to Chizkiya's ingenious solution as to how to be mechalel ma'aser sheni less than the fruta actually is causing us a problem, because now it's a davar sheyesh le'matirin. Now we have a solution of how to deal with this small bit of ma'aser sheni that's tamei, and you don't need to be mevatlet. So going back to our kasha, why does the Mishnah say you have a case of ma'aser sheni where it'll be batal b'roiv? There is no case where ma'aser sheni would be batal b'roiv. Although technically, batal b'roiv might apply to it, but there's no practical case ever where it would be relevant. Zok to Gemara, so maybe that's the case. Maybe in fact ma'aser sheni is never batal b'roiv, and the distinction that the Bryce is making is that truma is batal in 101, and ma'aser is never batal. And maybe we're trying to illustrate a chumrah of ma'aser over truma. We're trying to show differences. Some differences are kulos. This difference might be a chumrah because ma'aser will never be batal because it's always a davar sheyesh loy matir. Umimad the mashen came be ma'aser. The batal beruba, who said that when the Mishnah is making a distinction that truma needs 101, that ma'aser is batal beroiv, who said the Mishnah was trying to illustrate a distinction that makes ma'aser more kuladik? Dilma loy batal klal. Maybe we're saying truma is batal b'mei echad, and ma'aser is not batal at all because of the technicality of a davar sheyesh l'matir. Zok to Gemara loy matzos amar hachi. You can't possibly learn that what the Mishnah is trying to do is showing a chumrah of ma'aser rather than a chumrah of truma. The lagabre truma chumrah the truma katani, kula truma like katani. When the Mishnah is highlighting the halachas of truma, it's the chumras of truma that the Mishnah is trying to highlight, not the kulas of truma. So therefore, it's not logical to learn pshat in the Mishnah that the Mishnah is talking about illustrating the kulas of truma. As Rashi says, the lagabe truma Mishnah zu b'meseches bikurim shnuya. You know where we can find this Mishnah in Meseches Bikurim. Hilchach chashivusa dida kamani v'azal. The Mishnah is trying to illustrate the chashivas of Bikurim and Truma together. V'lav kula dida. It's not going to try to highlight its kulos. Shetehehi oila u'maiser eino oila. It's not going to try to show you where Truma you could be mevatel and maiser you could not be mevatel. To the contrary, it's trying to show a case where it would be easier to be mevatel maiser. And so far, according to Chizkiya, this would not work out. For Gemara, that's not true, because I'm going to cite an example of this same Mishnah that is clearly a kula. V'akatani vein nichsekoyin. One of the features of Truma and Bikurim that the Mishnah lists off is that it's nichsekoyin, meaning it belongs to the koyin, and he can use it to be mekadosh and issue it. If a kohen says haret mekudeshesli with this Bikurim, haret mekudeshesli with this Truma, it's a good kedushin. But if someone took ma'aser sheni and said haret mekudeshesli with this ma'aser sheni, it won't be a good Truma. It won't be a good kedushin, because Rashi says we're going according to Reb Meir, who holds ma'aser sheni mom and gavayu. So anyway, one of the cases in the Mishnah you have no choice but to say that it's talking about a kula of Truma versus ma'aser. So why can't we learn as well here that the fact that Truma is batal b'mei v'echad and ma'aser will never be batal is also a case where we're showing the chumrah of Meiser over Truma. It's still not logical to say that that's pshat in the Mishnah, because we have a brisa that clarified and made it very clear to us that in the case of bittul, we're trying to highlight the chumrah of truma over meiser. So that means meiser will be batal b'roiv. So you're back to the drawing board. How would you explain a case where meiser is batal b'roiv according to Chizkiya? Because according to Chizkiya, it's a davar sheyesh lematir. The Tanya Behedya, meiser sheni batal b'ruba. It's a mefurish, a brisa that says meiser sheni is batal b'roiv. Ube'eza meiser sheni amru. What type of meiser sheni would it ever be relevant that we need bittul? The meiser she'ein by shavar pruta. It's meiser that you could not have solved its problem in any other way. You could not have been paid. Why? Because it's worth less than a pruta, and you could not be machal unless than a shavar pruta. And so, at first glance, we're going to read this as it's two different options. Either ein by shavar pruta, that in and of itself makes it that you need bittul, or example B is v'shenichnas liYerushalayim v'yotza. It was already brought into Yerushalayim and then it left. So you you can no longer be paid. The Gemara is going to analyze these two cases, starting with the first. If you hold the Chizkiya that in fact there is a way for you to be mechalal ma'aser sheni, that's pachas mishavar pruta. The first example that the brisa just offered, where you need bittles, but ma'aser sheni b'shavar pruta, li'avad le'le the Chizkiya. Use Chizkiya's mechanism, and that's find money that already has loaded up with the kedusha of ma'aser sheni. Make the assumption that there's little room left on it, and then you could be mechalal this pachas mishavar pruta onto it, and now you have chilul. So why would you need to be mevatlet? And for the Gemara, a little bit of a doichik. You know what? You could say a case where you would need bittul. In the case of the park, you happened not to have had preloaded money. You didn't have money that had already kedusha ma'aser sheni, so you don't have it. So Rashi loy pada ma'aser athena. Till now, you have not yet been pada ma'aser sheni. So you are mois ma'aser biyadai. So if you had mois already in your hand that already had kedusha ma'aser sheni, yes, Chizkiya's plan works. You have a little bit of room left. You could be mechalel this pachas mishavar pruta on it, but you don't have it. So now you're stuck. You need bittul because now you have ma'aser sheni that's tummy, and there's nothing that you can do with it. Frank the Gemara. So what's the big deal? Make such a money. V'neisa meiser, take meiser the islay that he has elsewhere. Take other meiser that he has. V'nistrifinu. He has this little bit of less than the shavar pruta of meiser sheni that's tummy. Let him get other meiser sheni that he has, because nobody just has that much. If you grew in your field, nobody grows the total yield of a less than a shavar pruta. Take other meiser sheni that he has to combine. That will be a shavar pruta, and then you could do a proper chiluk, a proper chilul. Zok Timur, that won't work either, because the iraisa udrabanon loy mistar. The problem that we have here is regular ma'aser sheni has a kedusha on it midaraisa. The ma'aser sheni that we have over here, that's tamei, that's in a mixture. We're going to say that. Why do we want to be mechalalit? Because we're going to say that davar yesh lamatirin is not batal. The problem is midaraisa it is batal. Davar yesh lamatirin is only a chumra midarbana. So therefore, meikar adin, this meiser sheni is not meiser sheni at all, because it's really batal. So you have a half a pruta of meiser sheni that's not really meiser sheni at all, because midaraisa it's batal b'roiv. But you only want to deal with it because midrabanan it's still ma'aser sheni. You want to combine that with ma'aser sheni, that's real ma'aser sheni midaraisa. It doesn't work to combine those two to be mechalal it onto one pruta. Right to Gemara, okay. So let's find you some other ma'aser to combine it with that is only midrabanan. V'nei demai, bring some demai. You have a half a pruta of demai. You have a half a pruta of this ma'aser sheni that's only midrabanan requires chilul, and now you could put it together onto a pruta. You're being meshadach two derabanans. That doesn't work either. You know why? Dilma ose lasuye vadai. We're afraid that if someone says, "Oh, when I have a half a pruta, I could of my tummy that's mixed in with others, I could pull another thing, could pull something else, he won't have to. He's only allowed to pull the mai. He might think that he could pull regular meiser and use it, and that could lead to a churban. Because since that doesn't work, what's going to happen? The chil won't work, and then he'll eat the other mois, they'll eat the other payers meiser sheni, thinking it's mechul, and it's not. Zok the Gemara, okay. V'nesi stay prutois. So why don't you bring two prutois? Unechalal alayu meiser per pruta umechza. Take two prutois and take meiser. That's a pruta umechza. V'nechalal hai al haychisera. Now you're going to end up being mechalal a prut and a half of real meiser sheni onto the two prutois. There's extra room now in the other pruta. Now you have that extra space, and now you could be mechalo. You're a little bit on it. Zok the Gemara, mi savras pruto mechza tafsa stay prutois. You think that if I have a pruto mechza of meiser sheni, I could make its kedusha bichal on two prutois? That's not what's going to happen. What happens is it breaks up into two separate transactions. Loi, pruta tafsa pruta. The first pruta worth of meiser sheni will be typhus on the first pruta. The second pruta, the chatzi pruta, loy tafsa, and the second half of pruta won't go onto the other pruta because it's panchas mishava pruta. Hader havile the raisa udrabana. So now, when you want to be mitzarev, this mixture that really midaraisa is bottle beroiv, when you want to be mitzarev together, once again you have half a pruta that is a chiv midaraisa and half a pruta that is chiv midaran, and udaraisa udrabanan loy mitzarfi. Frank Gemara, okay, so let's try something else. The nicey iser. So why don't you bring one issue? Don't do the 2 coins. Bring one big coin and put the pruta and half on it. And now there'll be leftover space for the pruta. And once again, you have Chizkiya's Eitzah. So tomorrow we don't allow that. Dilma osi lasuya prutois. We're afraid you're going to do it in prutois, and then you're going to have the same problem. So of course, Tosh was asked, so how in the world did Chizkiya ever have a case where you had room? The teretz is because Chizkiya's case is before anything happened, you did that, where there's no chashash. Zok Rashi, Zok Toysvis, Dilma also suya prutois from Tomer. How did you ever put meiser sheni onto prutois? Actually, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead of the Toysvis. Rashi asked this kasha. Rashi asked this kasha right over here. Vim Tomer, Hama'urav boy, Yitztarf lahashmin. How do you have the Rashi? They're running. The boss Loimer, the Chizkiya Nami, Hechimishkachis, how do you have according to Chizkiya avoided? If the Gemara says you can't use an Isser because you might bring two prutois, so how in the Chizkiya did you ever use the Isser in the first place? I didn't mean it fast. So Rashi Mishkachas the Mechalel Meiser Besela Sholei, you were Mechalel Meiser onto a full seller. Oy Beshekel, Oy Beisser. Shafilu Haya Meiser Shovel, Sholish Prutois, even though it wasn't worth the full amount, then it would be nitvas kol isser. So now that we know that, how you could do that, but the problem is, why don't you have a gzeira? How could you do that? I dilma asula suya prutois. The same way over here, we say we don't let you put it onto an isser even though there's more room left. So how could Chizkiya use it? Zaktoisvis v'yeshloimer v'imtaimer dilma ma'aseh prutos levat k'degazer hacha v'yeshloimer the hasam loitoi the yada the chatze pruta loitavsa. A normal person knows that a chatzi pruta is not toifus, so he's not going to put it onto prutas. Aval hacha over here, toi because here we're going to have the other problem. He's planning to fill the prut up completely. He's planning to fill it up by being mitzaref the rice and the rabbanon, and that he doesn't chap. But he will chap not to put it onto prutos, to put it only onto an isser. But if he's being mitzaref the rabbanon with it, that's where he won't chap. He'll think he could put it onto prutos. Okay, Zog to Gemara weiter. Zog to Gemara weiter. So we're in a little bit of a stuck situation over here. So what was the kasha? The kasha on Chizkiya was we have a brayso that says that it's batal b'roiv, but according to Chizkiya, you always have a solution. So what did the Gemara answer at the end? You don't have a solution according to Chizkiya. Here his option didn't work. Why didn't it work? Because you didn't have a coin that had some room on it. And now to go make a coin with room on it, you're not going to be able to because of all the other problems. So therefore, here in this particular case, Chizkiya's answer doesn't work, and therefore you need Vittel Barot. But there was another case that the Brisa said we would require bittul. And what was that? V'shenichnas liYerushalayim v'yatza. This Ma'aser Sheni Tomei that got mixed in also was in Yerushalayim, and now it left. That's why you can't be pointed anymore. Fact Gemara, I'm sorry, we're not even talking about Tomei yet. You have a problem with why do you need to be mevatlet? Because it was in Yerushalayim and it left. Fact Gemara v'mai. So what's the problem if it was in Yerushalayim and it left? V'lihader v'na'ile. So bring it back into Yerushalayim. Zok to Gemara, Bishanitma. You know why you can't bring it into Yerushalayim and eat it? Because it became tamei, and you cannot eat ma'aser sheni that's tamei. Frank the Gemara of a nifrgei, she'll be pointed. The Amar Rabbi Lozer said, "Minai l'ma'aser sheni shenitz v'shapoyed noisai." How do you know that you could be pointed ma'aser sheni that became tamei? Afilu turning on Talmud Beis. Afilu b'Yerushalayim. Normally you cannot be pointed ma'aser sheni in Yerushalayim. Normally you have to eat the pears in Yerushalayim. But how do you know that if it's tamei, you could be poided even in Yerushalayim, where normally you cannot be poided? What does the pasuk say when it describes when you're allowed to be poided ma'aser sheni? It says, if you're very far away, to schlep all those pears is very difficult. So therefore you want to redeem them. So that's where you will make a pigeon or chilul. So zokt the Gemara, we're darshaning from loisuchol sa'esoi that it not only if it's too far you can't carry the pears, even if you can't eat the pears for whatever reason, even in Yerushalayim because they're tamei, it also warrants a chilul. The ein says el achila, loisuchol says it doesn't necessarily mean the pasuk that you can't carry it. It could also mean that for some reason you cannot eat it. Shenemar v'isa masas meis panav. I believe they're talking about Yosy. They gave them gifts. I'm sorry? Portions. So you see, it's a lashon of eating. Yeah, that's right. Ella, you know what the case was? You know why you can't be poided? It's because this is not Ma'aser Sheni pears that you slept up to Yerushalayim. You know what this is? You had money in Yerushalayim that you brought up of Ma'aser Sheni, and then you went and bought food in Yerushalayim. So this is already the second generation food. That's the original Ma'aser Sheni. That you can't be poided. That's why you can't be poided. Why not? Be poided that as well. We look in the Mishnah. Zok to Gemara. Yes, there is a Tana who holds that you could be poided, but we're going according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Yikah there. He says, sorry, you could no longer be poided. And Rashi gives the reasoning. It's since it's second generation Ma'aser Sheni, meaning it's not the original pears. It's kedusha that was put onto money, and then the money was then transferred again back onto pears that you bought. It's too weak of a kedusha's Ma'aser Sheni. It could no longer be transferred onto anything else, and that's why you need bittul. Frank Rabbi Yehuda, my yotza. So why did the Brisa say the case is that it left Yerushalayim? Afilu lo yotza nami. We know that according to Rabbi Yehuda, you cannot be poida anything that you've purchased with money in Yerushalayim. So why did it have to be a case of Yotza? It could be that you had pears that you bought in Yerushalayim with Ma'aser Sheni, they became Tamei, and now they're bought. And that's the Shaila. Why was it Bechlal necessary to have a case where it left Yerushalayim? So let's go back to our original Havamina that we're going with pears that are Tahar. And you can't be paid to them. Umay yotza, what does it mean yotza? Why is it that you can't be paid to them? What's the issue? Why can't you eat them? Why can't you be paid to them? It's speaking in the Nafal Machitza. It's Rachman al-Tzlan, or talking b'shas the Churban, and you brought the Ma'aser Sheni pears into Yerushalayim, and now you have to eat them there, and then the walls collapsed, and we had Churban, so we no longer have the walled city in which you're allowed to eat Ma'aser Sheni, so you're stuck. Frank tomorrow, why would I be stuck? V'Amarava mechitza lachal dairaisa. In order to be able to eat the Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim has to have walls, and that's a dairaisa. You're not allowed to eat pears Ma'aser Sheni unless you're in the walled city of Yerushalayim, and if the city doesn't have walls, it's usher to eat. That's a dairaisa. But mechitza is likloit. The halacha that we're talking about is that once it went into Yerushalayim, even though there's no more Yerushalayim anymore, there's already a chiyuv on these pairs to be eaten in Yerushalayim because they were in Yerushalayim. That rule is only midrabanan. It's only midrabanan that once pairs get into Yerushalayim, you can only eat them in Yerushalayim. That's exer derabanan. Midaraisa, just because it was in Yerushalayim, it doesn't matter. If it leaves Yerushalayim, you would be able to be pointed again. And therefore, v'chigazu rabbanon, where did the rabbanon say that once pairs got into Yerushalayim, you're not allowed to be pointed anymore. You're not allowed to take it out of Yerushalayim. That's only ki istul mechitzos. That's if the mechitzos Yerushalayim is still standing and you took the pairs out of Yerushalayim. But ki laslu mechitzos. But once Yerushalayim would be chor, rechman l'tzlon, and there's no more mechitzos, there the rabbanon never said, like goes rabbanon, there the rabbanon never said that you can't take it out and be pointed. So the question once again is, if that's the case, why do I need vittel? Zakt Gemara, like plug rabbanon, ben istel mechitzos, ben lastel mechitzos. We're going to argue and we're going to say that this takana that was made, that mechitzos are koilet, it means once it's in Yerushalayim, even if the walls of Yerushalayim are destroyed, you still could only eat these pairs and eat them in Yerushalayim, and that you don't have the ability to do anymore because there is no longer the walls of Yerushalayim in existence. Therefore, you need a bittul. Rav Huna bar Yehuda Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Huna bar Yehuda Rav Sheshes is going back to the top of Amar Aleph. We had a kasha on Chizkiya from the top of Amar Aleph. That was Chizkiya. You have a patent how you could be mechalo pachas mishavar pruta. If you have that patent, why is it that the Mishnah requires bittul baroi? Why aren't you just mechalal it? Zakt Gemara, you don't quite understand the case of the Mishnah. Katani ma'aser sheni she'ein amar sheshes chada katani. It's one big case. It's ma'aser sheni she'ein b'shavar pruta, but it's not only that. That's how we looked until now. It's ein b'shavar pruta. You can't be pointed. Chizkiya said you couldn't be pointed. There's more to the story. Besides ein b'shavar pruta, and it was nichnas Yerushalayim v'yotza. And the problem here is the same problem as we just discussed a moment ago, that it was nichnas Yerushalayim v'yotza. So the Gemara is going to ask in a second, so why is it even relevant that it's ein b'shavar pruta? We'll get there. But the main focus on why you can't be pointed here is because it's nichnas Yerushalayim v'yotza. Break the Gemara, kamai v'neheder v'na'ilei. Take it right back, and it's not tummy. Take it right back into Yerushalayim. V'nechle, I need it in Yerushalayim. So who cares if it's mixed in with others? Zok Gemara, because you can no longer eat peiros ma'asheni in Yerushalayim, like we said a minute ago, the nafel mechitzos, because the mechitzos fell. So for Gemara, it's not in Yerushalayim anymore. There's no more mechitzos. V'nifrake. So let's allow him to be pointed. Zok Gemara, ha'amar Rava. Rava said, mechitza lechal deraisa, mechitza likloit derabanan. And therefore, v'chigazu rabbanon ki isnul mechitzos, ki lesnul mechitzos legazu rabbanon. So that once again, to let him be pointed. Now that the walls fell down, we don't say anymore that it's stuck in Yerushalayim. It's as if it's out of Yerushalayim and be pointed. Dr. Gemara, because we hold like plug rabbanon. Once it's koilet, and now it has to be eaten in Yerushalayim, and you can no longer be pointed. It doesn't matter if the walls collapse. You're stuck there. Dr. Gemara, okay, so then what is the reason? What is the reason that we're explaining the Bryce as saying? It has nothing to do with Pachas B'Shavar Pruta. It's all about that we have a technical problem here. Is that the pairs were brought into Yerushalayim, which no longer allows you to be pointed them. But the problem is you can't eat it either because the walls of Yerushalayim fell. So why is it relevant that it's Pachas B'Shavar Pruta? Yachi ma'ir ya ein b'Shavar Pruta. Why was it relevant ein b'Shavar Pruta? Zok the Gemara, we're going to tackle it from the opposite angle. Afilu yesh b'nami, even if it has a shavar pruta, you still have the same problem that you cannot be pointed. Zok, you're right, but loy mi boy comer. We're saying a chiddush. Loy mi boy yesh boy. It's pashut that if there's a shavar pruta worth of ma'aser sheni, surely there the kolton loy mechitzos. If a significant amount of ma'aser sheni makes it into Yerushalayim, we say there's klita, and therefore you can no longer be pointed. Avalein boy, what if it was a tiny little amount of ma'aser sheni? Maybe the holder abundant that the mechitzos are koilet applies if you have some critical mass. You have at least a shavar pruta of meiser. But if you don't even have a shavar pruta of meiser, maybe it wouldn't be koilet. Kamash malon. So basically, it's all one pshat. It's all one reason why you need bittul. The whole one reason is that it was entered into Yerushalayim, which means you can no longer be pointed, and now Yerushalayim collapsed, so you can't eat there either. So you're stuck in between. And the fact that it's not a shavar pruta is completely irrelevant to our shaila. It's a zaytik chiddush to tell you that even pachas mishavar pruta of ma'aser sheni that ends up in Yerushalayim, the mechitzas are koiled, and therefore you can no longer be poided. So it's a weird scenario. Probably it happened. People took their ma'aser sheni up to Yerushalayim during the period of Churban Bayis. Rachamanu litzlan, the walls came crashing down because of the Churban. The enemies broke the walls down, and now they have all this ma'aser sheni. They can't be poided. They can't eat it. Zok to Gemara Vayter. Tanu Rabbanan. Im goyal yigal ish mimaisrei. Where is it that we know that you can't be poided shavar pruta? This whole last blot was based on the fact that you can't be mechal less than the shavar pruta, and that's why Chizkiya needed his special trick how to do it. Take money that has already kedushas ma'aser sheni on it. But where did the whole problem stem from? Where do you see you can't be poided less than the shavar pruta? Because it says in goyal yigal ish mi ma'isrei. If someone will be mechal some of his ma'aser, it's mashma that not all ma'aser is chilulable. Only some ma'aser is chilulable. Mi ma'aser v'loy kol ma'aser prat the ma'aser sheni she'en bo shavar pruta. Torah is trying to tell us that sometimes you cannot be mechal ma'aser sheni when it's less than a shavar pruta. Idmar zok gemara. Rabbi Ami Amar ein boy. If the ma'aser itself doesn't have a shavar pruta, it's a tiny little bit amount of ma'aser, that's when this pasuk is telling us that you cannot be mechal. Ravasi Amar ein b'chaimshay. Even if you have a shavar pruta of ma'aser, but its chaimish is less than the shavar pruta, that's what the pasuk is talking about. That you cannot be mechal. So let's make a typical calculation. In order for the chaimish to be worth a pruta, it must be that the value of the truma itself, of the ma'aser sheni itself, is 4. Because if the value is 4, then the chaimish that you add on, the fifth, is going to be worth a shavar pruta. If the value is less than 4, then a fifth of it will be less than a pruta. So b'chaimish shavar pruta means the ma'aser is worth 4, and the chaimish will be shavar pruta. But that's only if you calculate milabar. That's only if you calculate the chaimish. It's with the chaimish, it's going to end up being 1/5 of the total amount. But who said that's how you calculate ma'aser sheni? Maybe ma'aser sheni, the way you add a chaimish is if you have 5 prutas for ma'aser sheni, you add on 1, and it's milagav, right? When you're calculating the premium of the 20%, are you calculating it 20% of what's here in ma'aser sheni, or after you add it, it ends up to be 20% of the whole?
25.
So the way we're learning right now of ein v'chumshay, we're clearly learning that the chaimish is over and above what the amount is. So 4 prutas is the ma'aser sheni, and the 5th pruta is the chaimish. Rabbi Yochanan Amar ein boy, Rabbi Shimon Lakish Amar ein b'chaimshay. So you see that there was an ongoing machlokes. What is the bare minimum amount of ma'aser sheni that you could be mechal? Is it if the ma'aser sheni itself has a pruta, or you need the ma'aser sheni to have a minimum of 4 prutas, so the chaimish will be 1 pruta? Meisrei, the Gemara wants to ask a kasha. Ma'aser sheni she'ein by shavar pruta. If ma'aser sheni does not have a shavar pruta, really you have to be poided, but we could be mekel on you. Dayo, it's enough. Sheyomer hu v'chaimshay mechulol al ma'aser sheni, which is a brisa that's saying word for word what Chizkiya said. So this is Chizkiya's eitzah. So it's a funny lashon. It's enough to say it's mashal be'etzim. There's a chiyuv, there's a significant of ma'aser, but we'll be mekel. We'll let you do this. If you learn that what we're discussing, where do we say you can't be mechalit, even if the ma'aser sheni itself is worth several prutais, but its chaimish isn't worth a pruta, how do you kadali dayu? That would make sense why the brisa would use an expression of dayu. You have a chiyuv, and we'll let you do this. This will be enough. The avagav debedidei ispe, even though the core ma'aser sheni is a shavar pruta, even the bechumsha leka, since the chaimish doesn't have a pruta shaper, it's good dayu. Elamanda ein boy, but if we're talking about ma'aser sheni that it itself doesn't even have a pruta, my dayu, the lashon dayu is not appropriate. Zok Rashi elamanda amar ein boy, my dayu. My rabusei deitzrich lemisni dayu. What extra chiddush is the Rashi trying to tell us using the word dayu? If the ma'aser sheni itself is not even worth a pruta, you know what you should have said? Listni oimer hu b'chamshay, not dayu. Daya makes it sound like there's really Maisha Sheni here, and for the Chaimish, it's enough to deal with. That's how that would be the mashmois of Daya. And therefore, if we're talking about Maisha Sheni, it's not with Pruta, it shouldn't have used the word Daya. The truth is, I don't understand this so clearly because I don't understand the nuances of these expressions. I see a Victor's looking into his art scroll. Does the art scroll give a better insight into the how to understand the word Daya? Because I don't speak this language as my first language, so it's hard for me to appreciate it.
Is it sufficient? My Daya, is it sufficient?
So a lotion of sufficient was
What? Yeah.
he doesn't really give us a deeper understanding of the new. He just says the language Daya makes sense if you have a critical mass
There
of.
is a note. There is a note. I don't know that it really clarifies anything.
Okay, but I guess it is. If Daya would be a good lotion if you have critical mass, then we're saying you could be makel with the Chaimish being less than Pruta. But if the whole thing is less than Pruta, then Daya is making it sound like there's some type of concession, and it wouldn't require that nusach. This is the question we just raised a moment ago. When you're assessing the 20% premium that the owner himself has to add when he's being machal ma'aser sheni, how do you assess it? If it's worth 20, if the match is worth $20, you divide that 20 by 5, and therefore I only had 4, so I need $24 to be machal ma'aser sheni that's worth 20. Or do you divide it by 4 and I add 1/5, and after I pay the money represents 1/5 premium. So therefore, I would be paying 25. So on Meiser Sheni that's worth 20, am I paid it with $24 or am I paid it with $25? Amar v'nitashma. Let's see if we can arrive at the following price. Now we know when someone's machal Meiser Sheni, he has to add a 5th. But we also know that we don't want to be mafsed Meiser Sheni, so it's going to go to the highest bidder. So technically, someone can come along and outbid even the owner. So a Bailam Oimrim Be'esrim. The Bailam says that to me, the value of this Mashini is 20, and therefore I'm going to give 20 plus a chaimish. It's not yet defined what that chaimish is. And everybody else also agrees this is what it's worth, it's 20. So therefore, a Bailam Koidman, the Bailam gets first dibs at being Mechal's own Masha Sheni, because they added an extra 20%. How about Omar Echad Harei Be'eshrim Ve'echad? What if someone said, I'm willing to pay $21 for it? Turning on to Amar Aleph, Nundal Amar Aleph, a Bailam Noistim Eshrim V'Sheish. There the Bailam have to give 26. Why does he have to give 26? Zokt Rashi, because you cannot give it to the guy who's bidding 21, even though he's bidding more, because he's not giving the Chaimish. But you can't give it to the owner for 20 because that's being mavaz in a meiser. Somebody already valued it at 21. So therefore, he has to give 20 plus a chaimish plus the extra one. You don't have to pay a chaimish on the one. I only have to pay a chaimish on how I valued my meiser sheni. The extra dollar that I'm paying because Yena outbid me, that I don't have to pay a chaimish on. So therefore, I buy him noistum esrim v'sheish. He's going to give 26. So right off the bat, we have our answer because what is the chaimish? 5 out of 20. So you see clearly it's milabar. Esrim Mishnayim, what if the outsider bid 22? Habayam Nois, Esrim Misheva. The bottom got to pay 27. Esrim Mishalosh, what if he bids 23? Habayam Nois, Esrim Mishmayna, he's got to give 28. Esrim Va'arba, if the bidder bids 24, Habayam Nois, Esrim V'teisha 29. Esrim V'chomish, what if the bidder bids 25? Habayam Nois L'shlosh. Why? Because you only have to add a chaimish on your bid. You don't have to add a chaimish onto the premium because of his bid. You never add a chaimish on what this guy is outbidding it. So you clearly see that a chaimish of 20 is 5, not 4. And that's the maskana. Tosfos has a very simple kasha. If this fellow asked me for 30, If this guy's bidding, I'm sorry, if this guy's bidding 25, what is Allah? I have to give 30, right? It says if he's bidding 25, I have to give 30. Let's see where this is. So the question is, why does he have to do that? Why don't you say, well, obviously he wants to take over from me. So let him have it. That's what they ask.
Because the Balaam wants to have it.
Here's Rashi asks a question. There the Gemara asks, "V'neima legizbar." Let the Yisrael, the owner, tell the Gizbar, also Gavra b'charikoi. You know what? I don't want to pay so much money. He came instead of me. Charikoi means he's doing it for me. So let him have it for 30. Let him have it for 30. Someone tried once to outbid my brother. Once tried to outbid Shimon Warner on Mafta Yoina, and he got like the $3,500. And Shimon said, "You want it? You can have it." And then he got stuck with it, and he couldn't take it because he was a kohen. Because the kohen can't have Mafta Yoina because by Yom Kippur, Mincha it's a regular aliyah. So Zaktamar Rei Bo Achar Tachtreinu. He wants to take my place. He wants to buy for the same thing that I would. Why do I have to pay extra money? Why do I have to give 30? Let him have it for 25. Hektish is not going to lose. Why should I have to pay 30? The Mishnah says that if the guy said I'd pay 26, there for sure you can let the other guy have it. So I guess when we learn the Gemara in Erchin, we'll see why it is that I can't just tell him, if you want to pay 25, you can have it for 25. Why should I have to pay 30? Okay, we'll stop here, Be'ez Hashem, and we will be Mamshech tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow at the same time. Tomorrow's not a holiday.